Ryan Reynolds, Bradley Stalder here with Man versus Machine. Ryan, week 1 in the books. There's so much news, so many things to talk about, so many shifts in priority shifts based on depth chart, breakout performances, major duds, players that, okay, we've got information now. We can make, more informed decisions, no more wish casting, no more hopium. Maybe we need some hopium injected into our veins for some of these players, Ryan. It was great to have week 1 in the books. How are you feeling coming out of week 1?
No, I had a good hot start to the week. The main 1:00 slate was a little bit more even, and then I did well in the night game, so pretty good. Very excited as always.
Very good. Yeah, I like to track how I'm doing from a I use DraftKings as my barometer because I do so much volume drafting on there, and it was kind of disheartening because it tracks how much you put in and then how much you're projected to make, and I was like, wait, I spent probably hundreds of hours this summer, and I'm making $30 of profit on almost 400 drafts right now. And then I had to reassure myself that so many of the players that I'm high on are also on injured reserve to start the season. So I'm like, it could get better, right? I'm telling myself this narrative of I'm making a penny in return per hour on investment over the summer. But part of this is enjoyment, but also there's obviously top tier prizes when you get into different tournaments and whatnot. And those are not revealed yet. We have a long, long season to go. But one of the biggest storylines, Ryan, coming into Monday Night Football was that Christian McCaffrey was ruled out with a calf/Achilles injury. And we knew that it was kind of bugging him through the preseason. That wasn't the surprise. The surprise was that he was ruled inactive an hour and a half before the game. But we find out later that there were signs told to the team. JP Mason kind of gave it away on national television after the game that Christian McCaffrey was not expected to have a significant role back even on Friday. So McCaffrey's out. He may or may not be available for week 2. But how are you approaching Jordan Mason both for week 2 and now beyond with McCaffrey's Achilles tendonitis?
Yeah, no, he couldn't have played better against one of the more talented defenses in the league. And here's the big one here, though. Dating back to I'm going to use the phrase the Shanahan family, dating back to Mike. We got guys like C.J. Anderson and Olandis Gary and Ruben Drones. Elijah Mitchell's done well in the system.
What a throwback, Ryan.
Yeah, that's the most disgusting one of the group. So anyone can technically do well in this system. And I thought Jordan Mason actually brought, a little bit more than that, little power. So even when CMC comes back, it's not like I think it's going to be a split or anything crazy. But if they're up by 2 scores, Jordan Mason might get an extra drive or 2 here, even once CMC returns.
So if we're redrafting, is Christian McCaffrey a top 3 pick still rest of season?
Yeah, probably a little bit past that. I think he still goes in the first round, but maybe he's after AJ Brown now. Probably be where I'd have him, maybe somewhere around there.
Yeah, it's hard to feel comfortable saying he's going to be a top pick, but it's also not comfortable saying he's not a first rounder, right? Yeah, I just given the week winning upside that he offers by himself, and then also insert him into this Shanahan offense. But you talk about Mason, 28 rush attempts, 5.3 yards per attempt, a 73 PFF rushing grade. He got the touchdown. He also got, 5 yard. He got a target. Fine, whatever. But the passing work really didn't go to JP Mason. Deebo Samuel was very involved in this. And if McCaffrey continues to be out, I expect that it's going to be an enormous bump for Deebo Samuel in particular. He's like the handcuff plus that gets the movement if McCaffrey's out.
Yeah, 100% agree there. In fact, my pivot in Showdown, I didn't play a lot of volume on Showdown, but I played Deebo Samuel in every lineup with the same thought process. So with you 100,000% of the way there, pal.
Well, we will see if McCaffrey is good to go. He said he's good to go, but he also said he was kind of good to go for week 1. So we're taking his there's coach speak index, and then I think the next iteration of coach speak index is player speak index, where we'll be able to discern like whether these players are actually going to give us useful information. But for right now, we have to approach McCaffrey with a lot of trepidation for week 2 and fire up JP Mason as a high-end running back too, with mid RB1 upside. He was, a top tier running back last week. And we expect, in week 2 that if he's going to get the full workload, that he's going to be a major producer for fantasy points yet again. So Jordan Mason, major, but he's a handcuff. There's been some chatter now on the X machine that when McCaffrey returns, like you mentioned, maybe an extra drive, but there's been a lot of push that, he's going to be splitting more carries or he's going to get a lot more touches. I still think it's mostly McCaffrey who's going to get the bulk when he's healthy.
Yeah, I think once McCaffrey comes back, at least like a week after he's fully back, I think it's back to, premium stash land for Jordan Mason myself.
Well, McCaffrey's injury wasn't the only one that was devastating for fantasy. Puka Nacua suffers an MCL injury. The knee injury was re-aggravated in the Lions game on Sunday night. Sean McVay placed him on IR. Not good. He's out for at least 4 weeks. And then just a couple hours ago, McVay intimated that it may be a longer-term absence for Nacua. We saw Cooper Kupp earn 21 targets in his return. Kupp had been dealing with injuries off and on for the last couple years. He is an older player, but we saw Matthew Stafford yet again make Cooper Kupp the king. So, I mean, Cooper Kupp in wide receiver 1 overall territory rest of season as long as Nacua is out, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I know I did a $500 mid stakes league draft with a buddy of mine, and I think there was a 4th round, and I was like, we're taking Cooper Kupp, dude. And I was like, he's the only dude in this range, like, because I wanted him in the 3rd round. Like, he's the only guy in this range that we can say that about, where he could lead the league in receptions. It wouldn't surprise us. And Stafford, like you said, is a kingmaker, and I would generally say Kupp's better than Nacua when they're both at full strength anyway. So obviously, if you have Cooper Kupp, you're just holding on and hoping he doesn't get hurt.
It seemed like before the injury, Nacua and Kupp were like alternating drives almost, that it was clear that Stafford was hyper targeting those two. And Nacua looked good up until that injury. And then it just became the Cooper Kupp show. When it comes to like the secondary and tertiary options behind Kupp, I think Demarcus Robinson is still there. We saw a huge play from Tyler Johnson as well. There's been a little sprinkling of chatter about Jordan Whittington. Is it just going to be Demarcus Robinson? That's it, or are there other options that you're interested in the LA Rams?
Yeah, Robinson's not as fluid as Nacua anymore, but I would say he's the closest thing to Nacua they have on the roster. He's a bigger body, he's reliable, he's smart. But one thing I'll say about Tyler Johnson is 2 things, actually. One is, back when he was at the University of Minnesota, when I was watching Rashad Bateman film, I couldn't really tell the 2 of them apart at times. So he's a little better than I think a lot of people would expect. And the other thing is, it might be easier for McVay to just keep Robinson in the role he's in and stick Johnson more in the, Nacua light role. So I think there's opportunity there. And Colby Parkinson, if you're in trouble at tight end, like, he's worth a dart to throw, I'd say.
Yeah, I was going to bring him up actually next. Ryan and I are mind melding here. Colby Parkinson was a very late sleeper tight end pick for me. I had him on a lot of places, and I think that he is going to be a beneficiary of that, like closer to the line of scrimmage, middle of the field. When teams are triple teaming Cooper Kupp, like Colby Parkinson is going to be in that Tyler Higbee type of role. One player that is kind of forgotten about in this Rams offense, Tutu Atwell, didn't get much usage. So I don't think he's going to continue to make a dent, but is there like best ball upside if you're taking a deep cut on him?
That's interesting, because if, say, like, Robinson gets put into the Nacua light role, Atwell has a different skill set than everyone else because he's fast. And while I wouldn't call him, Van Jefferson exactly, he can be a field stretcher. So it would make sense if him and Tyler Johnson split time a bit based on what routes they wanted them to run. So a little bit in deep leagues, your best ball.
Well, in the Thursday preview last week, Ryan, we talked about Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. I mentioned how Mark Andrews was limited this offseason due to the injuries and the car accident issue. We were expecting that he was a must start, but it was Isaiah Likely who he got major targets. He was the tight end 1 overall, almost like by an even larger margin if that touchdown at the end or would-be touchdown counted. That would have been massive for Isaiah Likely. But was this Andrews is still just recovering? Is this Baltimore really wants Likely involved? Or was this also scheme-based that the Chiefs were playing too high and Andrews was the one who was going deep most of the time? Because we know Zay Flowers is not very often that deep threat. So how are you discerning this Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely 2 tight end situation?
So first I'd say is, Andrews has always struggled against the Chiefs a little bit, in part because they game plan for him. So that's one factor to consider. But from a macro standpoint, to zoom out a little bit here, this one reminds me from a few years ago when Dallas Goedert went nuts on opening day. Likely Dallas Goedert in this instance. Andrews is Zach Ertz. But the thing is, there's 2 big differences. Those 2 guys are better than Ertz and Goddard, and you have Lamar Jackson. So, Adam Levitan said this to me years ago. He's like, you can get into trouble with coaches should do this. It's about what they will do. So they should have these guys on the field at the same time kind of often, especially, considering Zay Flowers is really their only threat as a wide receiver, if we're being honest with ourselves here. So they should, but, do I think this is going to be, an everyday week occurrence for Isaiah Likely? Most likely not.
So is the Rashad Bateman dream dead, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be like a DFS showdown kind of player for me. So I'd say mostly dead, yes.
So it means he's slightly alive.
Yeah, there's a little bit of chance. Maybe we're that
was a Princess Bride reference, Ryan.
I wish I would have caught that. It's a great play.
I am not left-handed. Anyways, Baltimore. They were in this game. They were playing it pretty tight, but they were also, they were trailing. And we've seen over the last couple of years, Derrick Henry struggle in games where they were trailing or not favored. So I expect better days ahead for Derrick Henry moving forward. There's only a couple games where Baltimore is not favored rest of season. So I expect better days for Derrick Henry. It's okay. We're still firing him up. And you're still firing up. I'm gonna put a bow on Isaiah Likely. Like you're starting Isaiah Likely unless you have one of the big early round tight ends, right?
Yeah. Like I'm on a team where I have Kincaid and Brock Bowers, and we sincerely tossed around being aggressive with Likely, but we ultimately decided to be a little bit conservative. But yeah, and I think there's maybe 5 guys in the league that you start over Likely this week.
Well, I encourage all of you to put your start sit questions in the chat. We have time at the end, normally in the Man versus Machine show, to answer these. So as you're listening, going throughout, Ryan and I will be talking about a few of these players. We're going to talk about breakout players that we're buying or selling. We're going to talk about some busts, whether we're buying or selling them. We're going to talk about a few other notable situations and then get into your start sit questions. Make sure you guys are following Ryan on the Twitter machine at Ryan Reynolds NFL, not Van City. Okay. the less handsome Ryan Reynolds is that Twitter handle. You can follow me on X at FF Stalder. I'm the news desk director for Player Profiler. And we're going to get into a few more of these notes and buys or sells. But first, a word from Matt Kelly about Player Profiler.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. And one of our key missions is to make as much statistics and information and deep analysis available on PlayerProfiler.com for free. This is only possible because of you allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In package to continue to make all this possible. If you can't do All In, that's okay. We have a draft kit. Or you can just subscribe to the player rankings. Those now include tight end premium FFPC ranks, our brand new data analysis package, will blow your hair back. And of course, there's our Dynasty Deluxe and our DFS Dominator. Take a moment, check out our premium services to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.
That's right. Make sure you're checking out all the things on Player Profiler to support our work, bring you the best content in the industry. Let's put a bow on the Derrick Henry. Obviously, he got the touchdown, 40-something yards on the ground, but a player who I love drafting at the end of drafts in best ball, Justice Hill, was very involved. Are you buying or selling Justice Hill's continued involvement in the Baltimore Ravens offense?
Oh, man, I've loved Justice Hill his whole career. So this is the kind of thing that I could get in trouble with. Here's the one positive I'll say is Baltimore, for the first time that I can remember, has a below average offensive line on their right side, particularly. It looked like early on, especially, that they game planned around that. So, well, I do think Henry will get the rock in games, like they're 10-point favorites against the Raiders next week. But the Raiders also have a pretty good pass rush, so I could see them using Hill as a way to game plan around that liability. I think he's matchup dependent currently.
Yeah, Justice Hill was going so cheap, and I spent time arguing on Twitter with people about Justice Hill. Like, he's actually kind of good at football. Like, in 2023, Justice Hill was the RB12 in yards per touch, RB15 in juke rate, RB11 in yards created per touch, and RB18 breakaway run rate. And Derrick Henry's 30 years old.
Yeah.
Like, the Ravens last year were number one in the NFL in run plays per game. And this is a player who is going in the last round. He was ADP like 215, 216, last round selection. The zero RB drafters are doing a dance right now for Justice Hill.
Yeah, 100%, man. Like, all those stats make sense to me too. Like, none of that actually surprises me.
Good. I'm glad. Well, here we go. We're gonna talk about a player who still has the door open to play. Matt LaFleur has not closed the door on Jordan Love playing this week, despite the knee injury that he suffered at the end of the game. This is wild stuff. If Malik Willis starts, are there any pass catchers that we are starting in our fantasy lineups in week 2?
I mean, if we could just turn further injury off, like, I'd roll Jordan Love in a wheelchair out there before I played Malik Willis at this point. Like, we've seen Malik, I think Malik Willis is an interesting, project, so to speak. Like, this guy shouldn't be playing in week 2 for any NFL team. I don't know what's happening here. And the answer is no. I don't think you can play any of their pass catchers, unfortunately, especially after the expected rise of Jayden Reed. Like, I wouldn't play him in a lot of situations this week.
Yeah, no, we're benching all pass catchers for the Packers if Jordan Love is not out there. All right. Kirk Cousins didn't look good in week 1. And I mean, Kyle Pitts was okay. Drake London was trash. Bijan Robinson got a ton of targets. He had 7 targets, whatever it was. He got lots of targets there. And that's what we loved about Bijan Robinson, was an involvement in the passing game. That's one of the reasons why I had him as my RB1 overall, was because of the pass catching upside. And if the rushing was there too, oh boy, we're talking about another Christian McCaffrey. But the question is now begged, is it going to be Michael Penix sooner rather than later? Penix didn't play after that first preseason game. The coaching staff said that they had seen enough. Usually don't bench rookies in the preseason if you plan to if you don't plan to play them. So is there going to be quarterback controversy very soon in Atlanta, Ryan?
You were the only person I saw mention that. And I remember we were on this show when you said it, and the remnants of hair that I have left were blown back. I was like, whoa, that's actually pretty interesting. And we saw in week 1, before I finish that thought, the caveat is the Steelers, especially early in the year, have derailed teams with their pass rush. So I wouldn't say it's quite, time to hit the eject button, but Cousins did look stiff. He didn't look good. And I think the only core reason why Penix isn't playing right now is, if you do play him, you can't stop, So that's kind of a mess. And that situation you talked about is, they probably should have played him on opening day, honestly.
Ooh, yeah, Atlanta, yikes. Things could go very bad very quickly. we're going to shift into a formal buy or sell segment. These are players who broke out or had bigger performances than where they were drafted at. And we're going to discuss whether we're buying or selling. And we're going to start with wide receiver for the Detroit Lions, Jameson Williams. Williams was he had the biggest target share for the Lions in week 1. He had the nice touchdown. He showed good speed. But we also have seen JMO in previous seasons not really do much. So are you buying or selling week 1 Jameson Williams?
This one's so hard for me because he was my favorite receiver in that draft class. And like I saw that guy for the first time on opening day. So if that continues, like I actually think he's a better player than Amon-Ra. But Amon-Ra's just going to be a volume hound. So like for fantasy purposes, Amon-Ra's the guy. But my answer is I'm interested. I'm just not going to overpay for him. But yes, I am interested.
I am interested in buying Jameson Williams. I have also been very high on Jameson Williams. He is literally like a clone of Will Fuller. Like this dude is he's speed down the field. Yeah. He's playing in a dome. He's playing on a good offense. Like this is literally Houston Texans Will Fuller yet again. Also mysterious hamstring injuries, right? The soft tissue issues show up. The suspensions that he experienced, like literally this is a frame by frame Will Fuller. Now we just need a mysterious like pinky injury to derail his career, right? That's all we need for the Will Fuller comp to come to fruition. But I'm here for JMO season. If this is like the big plays, especially for best ball, because that's very much the perspective I'm taking from it. We want to see upside, and Jameson Williams has one of the highest upsides of all wide receivers in the NFL. So look, if he got 32% of targets this past week, even if he gets 22% of targets, I'm here for it. I'm buying Jameson Williams. Another wide receiver, but Greg the Leg Dortch was a late round. People were liking him, and especially after Rondell Moore was traded to Atlanta. Oh, Greg Dortch is going to take the slot. But Greg Dortch, we've seen time and again have great chemistry with Kyler Murray, and he showed that yet again in week 1. So in deeper leagues, Ryan, are you comfortable putting Greg Dortch as a flex consideration?
God, like I'm not a Greg Dortch guy, but at the end of the day, like, can he be worse Cole Beasley for Kyler Murray? He's definitely shown that he can. So in deep leagues, like if you're in Scott Fishbowl and you need to play 4 flexes, like it might make sense. But I'm not really a huge enthusiast. So I'm not going out of my way to target him or anything.
Yeah, just to give context for people, 6 receptions for 47 yards, low A-dot type of player. He's 5'7", 175. He's a Rondell Moore clone-ish, but actually like better at like real NFL football. Like Rondell Moore crushed when he was at Purdue, but translating that to the NFL, it just didn't happen for Moore. So we look at what Greg Dortch has done. We've seen season after season him having just some big games when he's gotten full roles with the Falcons.
True.
So I think Greg Dortch, is on that edge of flex consideration weekly. Even we'll talk about Marvin Harrison later, but even with the Marvin Harrison situation happening, Ryan, Alec Pierce had some big plays. Like he finally showed out, the former 2nd round pick for the Indianapolis Colts, showed out in week 1. Is this just a product of, Anthony Richardson having one of the strongest arms in the NFL and like Pierce was just lucky to get there? Or is this like finally year 3 Alec Pierce breakout season incoming?
I'm going to put it in the middle there. I don't think it's a breakout season incoming. I do think it's largely reliant on, Richard can just throw a football 70 yards down the field, but I'm also going to throw this in there. Donnie Mitchell got a few deep where he was open and he was missed. So I could see it being either guy, and I don't think it's going to be consistent.
Yeah. Alec Pierce, 3 for 125.
Yeah, that's not sustainable. Yeah.
41 yards per reception. Only 20 pass routes. Only 20 pass routes. So This is a player that was never a volume type of guy, and Josh Downs had been dealing with injury, and Michael Pittman is more of like a possession, closer to the line of scrimmage, not a field stretcher type of guy, definitely target hog, but Pierce has not played well, but maybe it's, finding the right quarterback to occasionally have some of those big plays, right? And Alec Pierce, if he's down the field, makes some big plays. We're there for that. So, look, we're not going to get 3 for 125 again, but could we look at 3 for 70?
Yeah,
like
sometimes.
Sure. But I don't think he's going to get more than 4 receptions in a game. Like, we would be very surprised.
Yeah.
Okay. Now the wide receiver 1 from week 1, breakout. Was it though? Jayden Reed, still was being pulled off in 2 tight end sets and was the wide receiver 1 overall for the week. Christian Watson got his touchdowns. Romeo Doubs got his targets, but Jayden Reed found space. He had big plays. Are you buying Jayden Reed as, a top 15 wide receiver, Ryan?
That, sure. Yeah, I think that's possible. Now, that depends on how long he has to play with Malik Willis, where I'll say this to you. If
Love is healthy, Jayden Reed's a top 15 wide receiver.
I think he can be. Yeah, I do. I think he can be. But like you said, the concern's always been, how often is he going to be on the field? They have so many good players. Like, they're going to play 12 personnel. I mean, but I do think he definitely can be. He should lead that team in volume, and they're one of the better offenses in the league.
They are. When everybody is healthy, they are one of the best. A former Packer, though, had a major breakout game in week 1. And just to let everyone know, before the game, Matthew Berry tweeted out, "What do we need for a Monday night miracle?" And you know what I tweeted, Ryan? Did you see this?
I don't think I did, no.
I said I needed 2 Allen Lazard tutties.
Oh, wow. that is a miracle.
I tweeted at him, I needed 2 Lazard touchdowns. And, that's what we got. Was after the first one, I was like, we're halfway there, baby. And then Tyrod Taylor gets in the second one. Oh, man. And it was, I don't know. There's just something special about that. But I think, Ryan, one of the takeaways from this, and I think got lost last year, was the chemistry between Aaron Rodgers and Allen Lazard. That's why they brought Allen Lazard in, was to be Aaron Rodgers' go-to guy if Garrett Wilson is covered. Because Garrett Wilson led the team in targets. He got, some shots downfield. It was clear they wanted to get him close in the red zone, ed zone. He's still the number 1. Let's not get carried away. But Allen Lazard is the Jets' number 2 wide receiver until Mike Williams proves that Lazard is not. Yeah. So I'm buying Allen Lazard as a flex option moving forward.
Yeah, 2 years ago in best ball, I was wildly overweight on Lazard for this very reason. Timing's important to all quarterbacks, but it's very important to Aaron Rodgers. And Lazard is one of 3 people that Rodgers has any faith in from what I've seen so far. He trusts Garrett Wilson. He trusts Breece Hall to a degree, who's a running back, so that's an entirely different thing. But he does trust Allen Lazard, and that, like you said, he's going to be their second receiver until Mike Williams proves that he can be, and that might not come.
Yeah, it's Mike Williams did not play a lot of snaps. He played almost 20% of snaps, maybe
something like that.
Yeah, he didn't play a lot, and yes, he's working his way back from the ACL. But by that time, by the time he comes back, Lazard might just still have the job. So that's a reality for us. And maybe he was dropped in some dynasty leagues because he was not good last year. And the Jets overall were terrible last year. But the Aaron Rodgers return, I think, injects life into the fantasy, the fantasy options for Allen Lazard. So I'm buying Lazard.
Yeah, I think that's fair, man. I mean, it depends on how big your league is, but if you're thin at flex or wide receiver, I think he's at least, they have a nice schedule stretch coming too, so he's at least a short-term, better than you'd think option.
Well, a player who had been out multiple seasons, J.K. Dobbins. have yourself a day, sir. Have yourself a day. The Chargers had the revenge game against the Raiders. If you remember last year, it was the Raiders who like blew out the Chargers and led to the firing of, the Chargers head coach. And it was a victory dance for everyone in Vegas. But J.K. Dobbins returned the favor, and he himself returned to a tune of 13 yards a carry. Whenever he's been on the field, has been one of the most efficient running backs. And now he's on a run-first team. Jim Harbaugh, we know what Harbaugh is. Day in, day out, he's going to cram the ball down your throat in terms of the running game. And Gus Edwards didn't look great. J.K. Dobbins looked the part. He had 13 touches. I think that continues to slowly increase throughout the season as long as he's out there healthy. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in best ball season, whenever I took Dobbins and I took him, what's even 8.3% roughly?
8%. Yeah.
Yeah. I was at least twice that. And every time I was like, dude, this is degenerate stuff. We lean in upside and all that, but this guy he might not even have a knee anymore. And, like you said, he's in the right environment. Jim Harbaugh's a football guy. They have a very good offensive line, maybe the best offensive tackle duo in the league, and they're going to run the ball. That's their plan. So as long as he keeps healthy, man, I agree. He's not going to get 20 carries anytime soon. They're going to slowly ramp him up, but, it's obviously very encouraging. I will say this. He was all by himself on a run he broke, and he got ran down. So I definitely don't think he has the jets he used to, even though he posted some pretty good next gen stats in terms of how fast he was running. But on that particular play, he got caught from behind pretty quick.
Yeah, look, you can't have everything. Okay, week one back, but he looked very good. 78 PFF rush grade. That was really good. 4 missed tackles forced on 10 rushes. That's really good. A 61-yard rush. He also got some work in the passing game. Sure, fine, whatever. If you're getting any work in the passing game as a Jim Harbaugh running back, that's great. That's great news. So, he had more rush attempts this season than he did last season. So,
good. That's pretty good.
Yeah. J.K. Dobbins, though, I think a major buy, and hopefully you stashed him on your bench because now he is an RB2 starter, I think, moving forward.
Yeah. Yes. There's definitely teams where I wish I had him as my RB2, so yes.
All right, Ryan. We talked at length earlier in the show about JP Mason, about him as a handcuff. Are you buying or selling Mason himself? As we're looking at week 2 and beyond, are you looking to sell high on him, or are you wanting to buy what Shanahan upside that you can get in the San Francisco offense?
Yeah, I mean, it's a complicated question because I've said this a number of times. If there were no injuries in football, I'd hit 70% of my bets. This is the kind of stuff where I've had tendonitis and it hasn't gone away for 5 years. So I don't know what's going on with CMC here, but if I have CMC, I'm going to play it safe. I'm going to keep Mason. If I'm pretty well off at running back and I have Mason and I could upgrade somewhere else, I'm going to try.
All right. And Ryan, this is your opportunity to victory lap about Saquon Barkley as well. You said after week 3 or so, you'd consider selling Saquon Barkley. You would start very hot, which he did. 3 touchdown game against the Packers. It was a disaster. It was a disaster game for the Packers. Let me tell you, as a Packers fan, I was like, not Barkley again, not Barkley again. Gosh darn it. And that catch was beautiful. It was a really nice play. Let's give you your victory lap. We'll say, he started off very strong, but are you still holding to sell Barkley after he's strong, or are you going to continue to ride the wave?
No, we'll see. I mean, this is what I've said. I said this to you before we went on the air. I think Swift and Miles Sanders would have both had success on the ground against Green Bay. The big difference is, and you mentioned this, the touchdown reception he had, that's a difference for Barkley. And the second one, and this is the big one, they don't actually always want Hurts to run the ball in from the goal line. They give running backs opportunities, and Swift last year just couldn't convert, where Barkley is radically better in the scoring zone than those guys. So I'm still I'm not like automatically going to trade him after week 3, but I have my eye on that. I'm going to keep looking at him. I don't think he's as good in space. I still don't think he's as good in space as he was when he was a rookie, where like he was a unicorn when he was a rookie. Like he was a problem when he was one-on-one with someone, where that's still not quite where he's at. But the next 3 matchups I think are, pretty close to all smashes, and then we'll see.
Well, we're going to shift from our breakout values of buy and sell to a bust perspective of buy or sell. We've got some players who really imploded in week 1, and whether we're buying, any perceived dip, or we are selling this player because we have major concerns and we don't want any, like, we've got week 1, we've got enough. And we'll kind of bunch the first 2 on our list together because of ADP. Drake London and Marvin Harrison Jr. were being drafted pretty consistently at that 1-2 turn. And it was frustrating for Drake London. London only 2 receptions for 15 yards, 3 targets, a 57 PFF receiving grade. It was not good for Drake London. One of the defensive players after the game said, "Oh yeah, he was just like doing a warm up," and that's concerning, when you were hoping that, Marvin Harrison or that Drake London would become like, all right, he's got the target share from the rookie year. It's Arthur Smith is gone. He's got the quarterback. But we saw Kirk Cousins, look a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage, not look for London down the field. And then another, again, for Marvin Harrison, only 3 targets as well, 1 reception for 4 yards. Both of these guys, terrible PFF receiving grades, 45.8 for Marvin Harrison. Are better days ahead for both of these guys, or are we just like, man, we whiffed on this for 1-2 turn and we just got to eat it?
Well, I hated the 1-2 turn for because these guys have volatility, but I'm not in panic mode yet. Going into the matchup against the Steelers, like when I think of how do you beat the Steelers, I think of like short to intermediate crossers, and that's not really Drake London's dance. So I'll be curious to see what he has coming up. This week he probably sees more Slay than anyone else does. But after week 3, the Falcons have a great schedule stretch. Like I could see London starting to smash after that. And with Harrison, I did see a few reps where it's like, dude, are you like taking plays off? I did see that, but I also saw a few where he created some margin, and there's the one that has been around Twitter where he was all by himself for downfield. So it's his first game. Going up to Buffalo is not exactly like a fun time for anyone. So I'm gonna wait and see on both of them, but I'm probably a little bit more worried with Harrison, especially since Kyler Murray is just like, yeah, dude, like this is the coach's job to get him the ball. I don't really care. That's a little that's an interesting soundbite.
That was really worrisome when I tweeted out, I was like, dude, that is your job. Like literally, Kyler. Oh, it's not my job to get him the ball. Are you out of your mind? Like, that is your job. You're the one who's throwing the ball. Like, I get that you got to go through your reads and you've got your hot read and you've got your player. I get that part of the scheme, but come on, like Kyler, like your job is to throw the ball to those guys. So yeah, Kyler, but to take a step back, earlier today, there was a soundbite that came out about CJ Stroud, and CJ Stroud said, you know what, now that I'm in year 2, like I'm taking the team by the horns, I'm listening to the other players, I am taking leadership for my team, and I'm in the driver's seat, and I'm gonna lead our team to victory. Compare that to when Kyler is like, no, it's the offensive coordinator's job to like get him the ball. Like the diametrically opposed quarterback leadership styles. Like, who do you want to play for? Do you want a guy who says, I'm the driver's seat and I'm going to get you the ball if that's how I'm going to run the offense? Compare that to Kyler where, okay, well, maybe Kyler still needs his training wheels,
Yeah, I mean, I like to play devil's advocate when I can, and I can't take the Kyler Murray side. Couldn't even think of something. You're 100% right. I'd rather have the Stroud mentality 100 out of 100 times.
Goodness gracious. Yeah. So yikes, the Kyler, like that's such a beta move. I'm sorry. No matter how you like slice and dice it, like that's it's not good. It's not a good soundbite. Even because I kept reading, the soundbite of like, oh, what's the context for this? It still didn't go. It still didn't sound good. Let's keep moving. The tight end position. I thought there was like a tier break for Evan Engram to be like the last tight end in that tier break. Because when we're talking about elite tight ends, at least from an ADP perspective, coming into the season, it was Dalton Kincaid, Trey McBride, Kyle Pitts. It was, your Travis Kelce, all Sam Laporta. But Evan Engram was like the bottom of that tier, but we were still comfortable with it because 140 targets last year, Ryan, 140. He had 4 targets, 1 reception for 5 yards. Yes, but it's Brian Thomas who's stretching the field. Christian Kirk was there. Gabe Davis was there. Are you pressing the panic button for Evan Engram? Are you buying him low after this performance? Or are you like, all right, I need to just pivot off of this tier?
Yep. I was with you heading into the season. He was the cliff for me too. I'm not really a panicky kind of guy, so I will sometimes wait too late in situations like this, but I am definitely concerned. I don't think it's like a nothing. I'm definitely concerned.
This is a thing for Evan Engram. We're raising both of our eyebrows.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, oh no.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
We'll do things a little bit out of order. We'll also talk about Dalton Kincaid here. I think it makes sense that we're also talking about, if we're going to talk about Evan Engram, Dalton Kincaid is also on that list because Dalton Kincaid, we had high hopes. He would be the target leader for the Buffalo Bills. But there was chatter about, it's going to be Dawson Knox, possibly. The target shares are going to be pretty flat. Kincaid, week 1 target on 25 routes, 11 total yards, 58 receiving grade. Look, he had 90 targets last year. We expect a year 1 to year 2 jump. But it's just Arizona. Like, we didn't expect Arizona to be, a tight end. Usually Arizona is like a tight end oasis. Over the last however many years, you were starting your tight ends. You were streaming tight ends against Arizona for years and years. So Dalton Kincaid, only 1 target, 1 reception. Ryan, is this low enough to press a panic button for Dalton Kincaid?
I'm kind of in the similar spot with Engram, except I paid more for Kincaid and I have more of Kincaid, but there's one caveat on here that there's 2 actually. His playing time was actually kind of encouraging for the most part, and 2, Buffalo ran the ball a lot. Like usually like they're one of the more pass centric teams in the league. That was not the case against Arizona. It was like a very weird that game went over 60 total points, and I don't think either offense particularly played that well. So that's like a weird aspect to me. But yeah, like I'm definitely in the range of maybe this is just a team where it's kind of a bit like Green Bay last year, where everyone has 4 or 5 targets every week. Like maybe that's where we're heading, and that's my concern. But the upside is still interesting. I'm curious to see what happens against Miami this week, who coincidentally that's a team Evan Engram did nothing against.
We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
We will see if Arizona is now, tight end lockdown season. Maybe it happens. It's like Arizona and Seattle. Like typically you would just stream your tight ends against them historically. We'll shift back to the wide receiver position. DeAndre Hopkins coming back from the knee injury, 1 target, 1 reception for 8 yards. He only ran 9 routes in this game. It's clear he's still working his way back from the knee injury, and we expect for week 2 he'll ramp up a little bit, but the knee injury is a real concern. So I'm selling DeAndre Hopkins, even if it's like, I don't know, if you're in Dynasty, like, can you get a 3rd round pick for DeAndre Hopkins?
I don't know. He's getting up there, and the thing too is the knee injury. Again, I'm not a medical professional, not even close, but I saw one of the Twitter doctors basically say like he's going to be dealing with this all year for the most part, and that was like, so I don't. My enthusiasm has been harmed significantly as well.
Well, as someone who is very high on DeAndre Hopkins pre-injury,
not good.
Not good.
Not good.
Raheem Mostert Didn't play very well, but he's out for this week due to an injury, and he missed part of the game, in week 1. So look, this is an older running back. He's had soft tissue injuries in the past. I think this is a chest injury, if I read the report correctly. But Raheem Mostert, are we trying to just get away from Mostert, or is this an opportunity to buy low on a player we saw last year have just massive spike weeks?
No, I don't think I want to buy low, but I'll say that no one really had much success in the ground in the Miami backfield last week. It was, the Jaguars. This is something I thought going in. The Dolphins actually have like a pretty talent poor offensive line. The Jaguars, they added Eric Armstead. They sneakily have a pretty good front. So I think that's the primary culprit here, and I think that could be a problem for everyone in the run game there. So not looking to throw him in the garbage for nothing, but definitely not looking to acquire him right now either.
Yeah, he's more of a hold than anything, and he's for this week going to be on your out or injured reserve spot, so you can pick up maybe someone off of waivers. Just a reminder for those who are in the chat to drop your start sit questions. We are getting through. We'll probably have about 10 minutes of start sits, maybe a little bit less, but we've got a few more storylines that we're going to be chatting about. But first, we want to talk about Tazi Spears. It's clear that Tony Pollard, RB1 in the Tennessee backfield, Ryan. That's how I had it projected from a rush share perspective. But, Spears was still involved, but it's clear that Pollard is getting the majority of touches for the Titans.
Yeah, Pollard definitely had a better game, and on top of it, I thought Pollard was simply the better player in week 1. Looked more fluid. They have similar skill sets, and Pollard I think he's the better player. I think it's going to take an injury to Pollard for Spears to really ascend. So if anyone wants Tajay Spears in your league, like they can, I'm willing to part ways with him currently.
Part ways with Tazi Spears, the last player who did not do very well from at least a fantasy perspective. The team won. First time in however many years that a rookie 101 overall has gotten a quarterback win, right? Evidently, that's a quarterback stat now is wins, right? But Caleb Williams got the win, but he did not play particularly well. 14 of 29, 48% completion percentage, 93 passing yards, a 50.2 PFF passing grade, 55.7 NFL passer rating, 22% pressure to sack percentage. Like, this is a player that, you have to wonder, is like, we have organizational concerns about Chicago, right? Is Chicago, like, the coaching staff, like, there was all off season, we were like, the offense, this is the best offense that a 101 has had in forever. DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, right? Rome Odunze. And yes, Keenan Allen and Rome Odunze are dealing with injuries right now, but DJ Moore's still very good. The problem is this a symptom of not necessarily Caleb Williams' skills, but is it instead organizational scheme, coaching that's just going to keep the Bears down?
Yeah, that's a very good way to frame that. Here's what I'll say. I watched that whole game live. Bears offensive line was a problem in both phases. Very undesirable there. I do agree with Shane Waldron being, like, that's not really, I've said this a number of times, like, from a pure talent standpoint, like, Caleb Williams in college was similar to Patrick Mahomes, but like Patrick Mahomes got Andy Reid and Tyreek Hill and all those guys, and Shane Waldron is not Andy Reid. So that there's not one time during that game I was like, oh wow, that was a great play call. But Williams played a little better in structure than I was anticipating, and made a couple of really sharp throws. Keenan Allen dropped the touchdown. The big one though is there were two guys, that one on stop and goes deep that he missed. So definitely not encouraging week 1. Definitely can't play him now. You got to wait and see. So he's nothing more than a streamer currently, and like I wouldn't even stream him right now.
Yeah, no, we need to see it from Caleb Williams. We need to see this offense come together.
Yeah.
We need to see the offensive scheme work. But an offensive scheme that's not working right now is for the Cleveland Browns. And, Deshaun Watson just looks bad. The Browns offense looks bad. David Njoku dealing with an injuries. He's going to be out at least for this week. We'll see if it's anything longer. But the bigger storyline for Deshaun Watson is not just that he's looked bad, but there are now new allegations of sexual assault that the league is investigating, that there's now suits happening yet again. You have to wonder at what point what is the tipping point for the Cleveland Browns? Are they just so, is their hubris so large that they can't just let him go? And I know there's so much money deferred and restructured and blah, blah, blah. And they're $200 million still they're going to have to pay out, whatever the outrageous number is over the next 3 years, the way they've restructured his contract. I know that it's a tough position to be in if you're the Cleveland Browns, because you've done that, but it's so easy for us to say, just cut bait. Like, how do we even handle a situation like this, Ryan?
Yeah, if there's one thing I learned from working with a few former NFL executives is that none of us know anything about contracts like they do. So I'm not going to go near that because I don't know. But from what I've read, I think what they need to be at least on the fringe with is we're going to pay you to stay home. Maybe we don't take the cap hit, but you bring nothing to the table. Like Jameis Winston, if you want Jameis Winston, if you want Jameis Winston to play, you should go watch his last game against the Saints, against the Panthers, because that's why he hasn't played since. But we're at the point now where that might be a positive. We saw Joe Flacco, go on a run with this team last year. They have the roster. He's not the guy. Again, I don't know. I didn't read the allegations. If the allegations happened after the last stuff was all settled, it's dude, what planet are you on, man?
According to the reports, it happened in 2020.
Okay, so yeah, I don't know how the math works there, but it's still terrible. But dude, just he needs to go away. Let's just put it that way. He needs to go away.
Yeah, it needs to stop drawing attention to all of that. Yeah. Whatever. Well, let's move on, because that's what the Browns should do. The Titans imploded. Yes, it was kind of predictable. The Bears defense is very, very good. We knew that coming in. The Bears have one of the best defenses in the NFL. But the Titans were up 17-0 on the Bears, and then the Titans imploded. So you have been a little bit lower on the Titans. We've seen my opinion slowly being chipped away at my bullishness. But is there any hope for Tennessee moving forward, Ryan?
I mean, they play the Jets this week, so I thought the Bears and Jets were going to be two of the 4 best defenses in the league. So I don't think there's any shame in struggling against the Jets or against the Bears in Chicago, no less. But I had some positive takeaways actually from Tennessee. I'm not sure Will Levis is the guy, but I do think there's still a path where you said best case scenario is he's Jameis Winston. I think that's still, I called him drunk from the night before Josh Allen is kind of what he reminds me of. So I think there's some path there still. The left side of their offensive line, they spent their first round picks on their left tackle this year, the left guard the previous year. That's going to be a good group. They're already the one scoring drive they had where Pollard had a big I think he had 40 yards rushing. It was all behind the left side. And on top of that, Brian Callahan had a few really nice play designs to take advantage of that. So I do have some hope there. There was a route about mid-game where Calvin Ridley got loose deep and Levis missed him. So I think they're going to bomb this week against the Jets most likely. But after that, I could see the offense improving. And the Titans defense was much better than I was anticipating. I thought losing Vrabel was going to be a bigger deal than it was in the short term. So I could see I'm actually a little higher on Tennessee, oddly enough, after week 1 than I was.
Interesting. Will Levis, number 7 among all quarterbacks in deep ball attempts. They were top 10 in team pass plays. They had a positive game script for the majority of the game, despite all of the disaster zone plays. Well, Levis was number 5 in danger plays last week and number 7 in interceptable passes. But here's the bizarre thing. He was 13th in air yards, 14th in air yards per attempt, but 29th in yards per attempt. So,
yeah. The Bears, and again, the Jets this week, we're talking 2 of the 5 best secondaries too. Yeah. So I think there's better days ahead for that group.
Well, we'll skip down just a little bit. Is Jalen Wright startable for Thursday Night Football? Mostert is out. Achane is majorly questionable. Obviously, we're wanting to roster Wright, but at this point, is he startable or is it also Jeff Wilson?
I don't think Wright's startable. I think offensive line that's struggling, run game that sucked last week. Jeff Wilson's a veteran that knows the system on a short week. I think Wilson steps in for Mostert almost 1-for-1, and Wright's still a stash. But again, long term, Wright's like a really good fit in this system. I could see him later in the year having an impact.
Justin Fields planning to start week 2. Russell Wilson also questionable. Fields played okay in week 1. He played okay. Probably good enough to hold on to whatever starting role he has. Even if Russ comes back, if Justin Fields performs well again, is it Fields' job to lose?
I mean, it could be. Why wouldn't it? Especially, I think they play Denver this week, right? Like, you're 2-0. He's a dynamic runner. You want to run the ball. Like, why wouldn't you leave him in there if you start 2-0?
All right. I think we've hit on enough storylines for right now, Ryan. Let's just look through some of the start sits for the last couple minutes. Start 3, JT, Pacheco, Mason, Nico. He wants to start all 4 of them, but he can only start 3. So Jonathan Taylor, Pacheco, JP Mason, and Nico Collins.
I'm going to start JT, definitely. I could see JT having like 200 yards rushing against the Packers in a best-case scenario. I think you got to start Pacheco.
Yes.
And I think, I think I would actually lean Mason if CMC's out, just because of the matchup with the Bears.
I agree with you. Those 3, I'm going with that. But Dynasty PPR, should we trade likely for Blake Corum?
No.
Ooh, I'm going to say yes.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I do.
I think that's yes. If you have Isaiah Likely, it's probably because you have some other tight end who's starting for you.
Oh, I actually read that the wrong way. I'd rather have Corum.
Yes,
Sure.
I would rather have
I'd
the
rather
Corum
have
side.
Corum. Yeah, I'd rather have Corum.
I'd rather have the Corum side. Let's see here. Are we saying Marvin Harrison Jr. is a potential bust, Ryan? Are we gonna get that sound bite?
Not for me. No, it's a little early for that. But he's on Storm Watch right now. That's for sure.
He's on Storm Watch. Oh, all right. Am I selling Aaron Jones, Jordan Mason, J.K. Dobbins, or Jerome Ford? Those are my 0 running backs. I don't think you sell any of these guys. You hold on to all of them. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it would depend on what you can get for Jerome Ford, just because like what's going on in that town right now. But I wouldn't give any of them away, and I don't. Aaron Jones looked good in week 1 too.
He did.
Specifically, he did. He looked good.
Am I starting Tua or Kyler Murray this week? Well, Kyler popped up on the injury report today with a knee issue. I think he'll be fine, but if the running game is gone, you could really see the passing game like be short, intermediate, lots of Jalen Waddle this week. If Achane is limited in the passing game, downfield throws are good for Tua.
That's a great question. I had to make sure that Kyler was playing the Rams. I think I'd lean Kyler because of that, but I don't think there's a wrong answer. And the injury uncertainty, if you want to play it safe and go with Tua because of that, I think that's fair.
Should I trade Olave? We talk about busting, Olave for Derrick Henry. My wide receivers are Olave, Rice, Evans, Debo, Chase. My running backs are CMC, Zeke, Mostert. I would make that trade. I would go get Henry.
Yeah, me too. Definitely.
Start Herbert or Khalil Shakir. I'm sorry. Deontay Johnson, Demarcus Robinson. I'm the Kupp owner.
Tough question. Oh, man. Yeah, I think you got to wait on Deontay Johnson. So I think I'm going to lean Shakir, and I don't feel good about that. I don't feel good about that at all.
Oh, man. So I was looking up Bryce Young stats today. This is wild because I don't know. Call me, I'm stuck on my priors. Bryce Young was number 2 among all quarterbacks last week in deep ball attempts, number 2 in air yards, number 2 in air yards per attempt. He was also 7th in interceptable passes. And the Panthers were number 1 in pace of play. So they were getting a lot of plays, lots of deep plays, just weren't converting. So I think Deontay Johnson will come.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, Definitely want him more long term, but you convinced me. I'm going to switch my answer.
Senor Football, Aaron Jones, Jerome Ford, Brian Robinson, Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, Brandon Ayuk. Got to pick one standard league, non-PPR. So who scores the most touchdowns?
I think I'd actually go Brandon Ayuk against Brian Flores bringing heat, but I don't have a ton of conviction on that. That's a group with a lot of good options.
Give me some Jalen Waddle. I'm going to start Jalen Waddle.
And it was between him or Waddle for me.
Achan will play. I'm not sure if he may play, but will he be majorly limited? He's never been a major snap share guy anyways. So it's probably Jeff Wilson, maybe Jalen Wright, but probably Wilson. DJ Moore, Rashee Rice.
Honestly,
Keenan's hurt. Roma Dunze's hurt.
True. That's true. Oh boy, that's tough. Because the way they used Rice too is like, he's essentially like their Kelsey now.
Yep.
Oh man. I think I'm going to lean Rice. I feel terrible even saying it out loud though.
I think Rashee Rice as well. He's just safer.
Yeah.
Okay. Flowers, Mason, Godwin. Pick one.
Godwin.
Yeah, Godwin. He's crushing. He got good target share. Baker looks great.
Yeah. Lions matchup's a good one. Yeah.
Are we dropping Blake Corum? No, don't drop Blake Corum. This is potential league winner. Arguably one of the best running backs in college the last 2 years. So
yeah. Unless like you absolutely need Jeff Wilson. Jeff Wilson's the guy I'd cross up that list.
Yeah, no, give me Blake Corum for sure. Any Derrick Prince sightings? No, he's stuck on the practice squad. All right, Ryan, this has been a lot of fun. Make sure that you guys are checking out Ryan's work at Ryan Reynolds NFL. I'm at FF Stalder. We go live 9 p.m. Eastern every Wednesday to give you the goods, man versus machine. Any words for the people before we log off?
It's only 1 week. Don't overreact. But, like we talked about, there's some situations we should be a little worried about.
All right. Till next time, everyone. Good luck in the fantasy football streets.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to PlayerProfiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, Data Analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.